Forbes magazine lists 15 ways we can support local businesses during the coronavirus shutdown. Why is it important? Local businesses are essential for our economy. They bring growth and innovation to our communities. Tonight, our show wants to support a local business while giving you new ways to change up your recipes. It's good to have you here.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you. And now your host, Dr. Angela Williamson.
Kim Peeples is here with us tonight. Kim, it's so great to talk to you.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is such an honor.
Well, we're filming this a little bit earlier than our nightly show because we want to show your beautiful store. But before we go into all the items that are in this store, tell us a little bit about you.
Oh my gosh, about me? Well, I've been doing this particular business for the last 7 years. Prior to that, I was a financial analyst and I worked for a large electronic retailer for about 23 years. Before that, I was in business with my father, who probably taught me almost everything that I know that's important to business, right? And the journey started right out of college with Dad, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the journey and how it started with Dad in a few minutes. But first, I love the story that you tell of why you chose this location, vomFASS in Claremont. So tell us that story.
Yeah, so being a financial person, right, I knew in my heart that Claremont was the place to be, but being that financial person, I had to do the math and the homework behind it, right? So you can't see it here, but right across the street from us is a little stairwell. And so I sat on those stairs for 2 weeks and actually counted people to make sure that this was the right location, right? So I was looking for, folks that were walking by, but I was looking to see if they were shopping, did they have bags in their hands? And at the same time, I was comparing another location that I was looking at. So we were doing exactly the same day parts, the same everything.
Now, that's really great advice for someone who might be thinking about, I know we're in a shutdown right now, but people are still entrepreneurs. So they're thinking about what they want to do next and start their own small business. Why do you think that was important for you to do that?
Well, I think, and it's kind of a cliche in the business world, but they say location, 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 yes. Right? And honestly, once I picked the location and I knew I had the perfect spot, the rest just kind of happened, organically, right? And that was the biggest decision. So you didn't need to pick the right location that's going to work for your type of business, because not every business needs to be in the same location, right? We knew we needed walk-by traffic. It was nice here in Claremont because we have other small businesses that are around us, so people are used to supporting. We had a movie theater, we had restaurants, so people were going to eat after coming, by and visiting us after they eat and after they go to the movies. So I think location is super important. And you got to also make sure that you're picking the right square footage for your store, that you're not picking, a store that's too big and you're not going to be able to cover the rent, for example, or put, the bigger the store, the more merchandise you have to buy and put in there. So it's kind of like the Goldilocks. You're looking for that perfect little store.
Wow, and we're so happy you're here too. Yay. In Claremont. Well, one of the questions I'm thinking in the back of my mind, and viewers might want to know this too, why a European market? Because you had to come and then train us as Americans of how we can enjoy this European market. So tell us what you did there.
Sure. So kind of why the European market? Once I got past the taste and the quality, it almost didn't matter, if it was a European market or anything, I was sold, right? I just loved it so much. But the thing that I did love is it's not a store you're going to find on every other corner, right? And I wanted something that was unique, something that I could bring to people, something that had a story. Almost every product in here has a story. And you can trace these products back not only to the producers, but to the very trees, for example, that our olives come from. So to me, that was important. Integrity, quality, and vomFASS brought that.
I love it. Well, you mentioned earlier some of the reasons why you chose this location, because it was surrounded by movie theaters, and we don't have the movie theaters right now. So it was surrounded by other small businesses, and a lot of small businesses like your business, you've been actually learning to cope with COVID. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that and some changes that you had to make with vomFASS to make sure that vomFASS is still here.
Yes, and thank you for that. And right off the bat, I also want to thank you too, because early on, we didn't know. We didn't know how this was going to end up, and we still don't know how it's going to end up, but the very early days were super scary in here. And I remember one day you heard me say that we weren't doing so well, and you rallied the troops. And you brought your friends and your family and folks in here, and people were buying gift cards and supporting us and doing things. So thank you from me, from the bottom of my heart, because the first few days or weeks of this COVID was so scary. We just didn't know. The thing that has stayed scary is there's so many small businesses around us that aren't making it. And we're just sad about that. The movie theater still hasn't been able to open back up. And the question is, will they? You know, when they get the opportunity, can they? You know? So we've seen so many tragedies from this in here locally, and even in our vomFASSes, you know, in some of the locations. But some of the things that we had to do was to, first of all, make sure that we were being safe, right? We do everything following the health department and CDC guidelines, right? So that was number one. We wanted to make sure that you as a customer coming in are safe, but our employees are safe. And then beyond that, we had to stop tasting. But even though that's what we do, our motto is try before you buy. Right now, we're not allowed to do that. And guess what? While that saddens us, we're happy to do that if that keeps everybody safe.
And so if I was a small business owner and I'm facing some of these same trials that you've gone through, what would you tell me?
Sure, and while I'm no expert, I don't think any of us are during this time. We're all kind of learning as we go. The one thing that I can say that helped us the most was the ability to be flexible and to pivot when you need to pivot, right? And be able to even talk to your customers and find out how best you can serve them. If you've got a way to survey them or talk to them just directly. Because some of the things that for us right away was when, especially again early on when people were sheltering in place, they still needed their vomFASS products. So I got in my car and started delivering, you know. So people would call up, and now we've got a website, so you can go on the website and do it from there. But people would call up and we would just get in the car and drive it to them. So I think for other people out there that are running their small businesses during this time is obviously you got to do everything with the utmost safety and with both your customers and your employees in mind. But the other thing is that you've got to be able to be flexible and think about business in a way you've never thought about it before. And you might find that some of the new ways of doing business are even better. Pre-COVID, we were so ingrained into this community, and the community wanted to make sure that they supported us. So one of the things that I can say is Claremont is one of those communities that does have a lot of support, like from the Rotary Club and the Kiwanis and different places. And I say reach out to them because they've all got programs going on. They're trying to help local businesses. Get with your community and see what you can do to support maybe the seniors in your area that can't get out and about. We've got a good relationship with Pilgrim Place here, which is a place for the senior clergy, and so they know if they need something, they can call me and I'll bring it to them.
Wow, I love that because people are they're looking for ways, and you said I'm not an expert, but people want people's personal experiences, and so that you're sharing your personal experience is so great right now. Well, let's pivot a little bit for ourselves, but I want to talk about some of these wonderful products that we have here, because one way that you've probably noticed that people are doing a lot more is they're cooking at home more, and they could fit vomFASS into their new recipes, correct?
Absolutely. One of the things that we have seen is that there's a resurgence of people cooking at home, right? Learning to cook in some cases. And some of the things that I will hear sometimes is people say olive oils and vinegars, I don't know what to do with them, and so maybe I'm scared to jump into that arena. And what I say is almost every great recipe starts with olive oil. You can't pick up a recipe that doesn't almost start with olive oil, right? Yes. And then the question becomes, what olive oil and how do we get, really good olive oil, right? Yes. And so we try to answer that question here at vomFASS. We serve the top quality olive oil. It's always extra virgin. You never have to worry about, middlemen and people cutting other things into it. It is the purest quality. So then the question becomes, how do I use it, right? And so a lot of people might think bread dipping and vinaigrettes for their salads, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? That is probably the number 1 and 2 uses for my olive oils and vinegars. But also steak marinades and, cooking with your rice and adding, a little olive oil or vinegar to it makes it really nice. Our vinegars are what we call drinking vinegars, so you can actually make little spritzers or shrubs. Are you familiar with a shrub?
No, explain that.
Yeah, so a shrub is a vinegar drink that they would actually drink during the colonial times. It was kind of the pre-cocktail days, and you just mix a little vinegar in with some sparkling water, and voila, you've got a little spritzer. And so a lot of people will use our vinegars for that as well.
Wow.
Especially the passion fruit or our calamansi vinegar.
That's my favorite vinegar.
Yeah.
So now I have another use for that vinegar as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we don't just have the vinegars and the oils, but you have other things as well.
We do.
Talk about them.
Sure, absolutely. We've got some gift sets, as you can see, as we're coming up onto the holiday seasons. We've got those. This is probably the most unique item in the whole store and my best-selling spice. It's called Unicorn Magic Sea Salt.
Okay, and I have no idea what you use that for, so you have to tell us.
Right. So I always say, well, who doesn't need a little unicorn magic in their life, right? But this is a mixture of a sweet and salty, so it's really good on popcorn or even as a topper on ice cream. Just love it. And with the beautiful spices in there, yes. And it's so good, and people are just drawn to this Unicorn Magic.
Wow, I love it, and it has all these great colors to it as well, too. Wow, okay, so now I know what it does, so I'll definitely have to pick that up.
That one.
Well, tell me about these 3 items here. This is the same item, but...
Yeah, so just a couple of things just to say that, while we do the oils and vinegars, we also have teas in the store. We have some pantry items, particularly here, the peanuts. We have a maple bacon peanut, which people go crazy for. Dill pickle, which we hope to have back in stock soon. We have sold out of that. Salt and pepper, and then a Cajun spice. And so the peanuts, people have gone crazy, and you're looking for things just to snack on, and while you're home and maybe doing your home office work or whatever, these peanuts are perfect.
Or on a Zoom call, and you just hold the peanuts at the same time. And these make perfect gifts as well.
They do. They absolutely do. You do a little 3-pack of those, or we make baskets around the peanuts as well.
Wow. Now, I just want to get one tip from you before we close tonight, but a tip of how we could change. You talked about a marinade, but maybe tell us about one thing where you've changed an oil and a vinegar to a standard recipe, and it's just the best thing ever. Yeah,
so I actually have 2 things, and I'll do them real quick. How's that?
That works for me.
Okay. So we were talking earlier about a vinegar called calamansi.
Yeah,
that's a fruit from the Philippines. And so it's a cross between a lime and a tangerine. And I can no longer have salmon without a spritz of that on top. Super easy. You make your salmon and just spritz it with that, and now you've got a whole new dish. It's just so delicious. Wow. The other thing that I really enjoyed and just mixed up a really simple, or switched up a really simple recipe was I love Caprisi salads. But sometimes, you don't have all this stuff, or you want to do it really quick, and so you just do the little mozzarella balls. You can even do the tomato balls, but I add in a fresh asparagus in with that, and then use our basil and a cherry balsamic, and mix that up with a little bruschetta sauce or spices, and it's delicious. And you can just do that in a bowl. You don't have to do it all fancy or, yeah.
Very nice. Well, this is just wonderful. Thank you so much for opening your store up to us.
Oh, honored to have you here. Thank you.
It is our pleasure. And also, too, thank you for the advice that you're giving, just sharing your story to small business owners and entrepreneurs out there that are watching right now, because it's so important. They're so much a part of our economy. So thank you so much.
So, and to everyone, just please shop local, shop small this year. It's just going to mean the difference to a small business owner.
Definitely, and I love that. It's a perfect way to end tonight.
Where's Tommy?
I thought he was with you.
No.
Jack!
Tommy? Don't stop. Keep playing. Here we go. Here's the fun part.
Encouragement. Pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Manny, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Chance to talk about Forgotten Hollywood. I can't wait.
Yes, and before we get to Forgotten Hollywood, we want to know about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a Southern California native, and I currently am a professor of cinema, television, and radio at 2 colleges in Southern California, Fullerton College and Mount San Antonio College. I'm a broadcaster. Started my career, which I'll talk about in a bit, but currently I work as a weekend traffic anchor at KNX 1070. And I'm a author of Forgotten Hollywood, a book series that intersects Hollywood with Americana and what I metaphorically call Hollywood in Vine moments.
I love it. I love it. So tell us, how does a reporter get to being a specialist about everything Hollywood?
Well, it didn't start that way, but I've been fortunate to work with legendary people who work in Southern California broadcasting, which is in the shadow of Hollywood. I was hired by the iconic Art LeBeau. I think everybody knows who Art is. I think I could do a lot worse than having as a mentor Art LeBeau, who's still on the radio at 95 years of age. He's in the Radio Broadcasting Hall of Fame, and he currently works at K-Day. So he's my mentor, my guide, and he was the one that suggested that I step out of his shadow. And ironically, he stands about 5'6". I'm 6'5", so standing out of his formidable shadow, you get the picture.
Yes, I do.
So I decided that I wanted to talk about something that I thought would really resonate with the public that's used to listening to oldies that I used to play. And I felt that Hollywood was something that really resonated with my audience. Now, my parents were really big on promoting education as I grew up, but it was my grandmother who believed that I should understand the arts and humanities, learning about music and television and cinema. But I wanted to come up with the perfect angle, and what I decided to do is to write about how Hollywood tackles Americana and some of the big things that we take for granted, but look at it in another way. And instead of using familiar names like Marilyn Monroe or Humphrey Bogart or Cary Grant or Katharine Hepburn, I decided to use the actors who appear under the titles of the films, people who are still familiar if you see their face, but are rapidly becoming forgotten, hence the name Forgotten Hollywood. Folks like Peter Lorre or Claude Rains or Basil Rathbone, Marjorie Main, Key Luke, Eddie Rochester Anderson. These are great actors who appeared in as many movies as the A-listers, but they tell remarkable stories in the way we shape this, the Old West, the way we look at war, the Great War, and how World War II may have ended because of Hollywood. It looks at the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, and even the assassination of President Kennedy. We look at how Hollywood tackles race and disability.
Well, you threw out so many names there. So, and this is the reason why we have you on the show, because we wouldn't have you here if you couldn't tell us a fascinating story. So I want to hear a story that maybe we don't know about, but we've seen this, or we'll hear this phrase, and it's that character. So I want a story.
I've got a great name. Arthur Lake means nothing to you, I'm sure.
No,
But
sorry.
Arthur Lake was this serviceable actor. He didn't appear in many movies. He didn't have to. But one thing he is known for is playing the lovable Dagwood Bumstead, who was part of the Blondie series of comic strips and then later movies. And it's by no coincidence that he got the role, because the comic strip was owned by the Hearst Company. Well, Arthur Lake was married to the love child of Marion Davies and William Randolph Hearst. He was set for life, never had to work, yet he became Dagwood Bumstead. Once he got that role, he never did any other role except that part in a number of movies and television. He had so much free time that he donated his time to the Hollywood Canteen to raise love and comfort and money for the armed services, the war bond effort. And he met somebody at one of the Hollywood Canteen socials, and that individual was murdered 2 years later. And I think we might have known, it's the oldest cold case file on record. It's the Black Dahlia. So he actually met the Elizabeth Short, who was the Black Dahlia, and he became a suspect in that case. So now he's married to one of the most important families. Yeah. He's involved with the largest cold case file. Now, I call this chapter From the Sublime to the Ridiculous. Here's the ridiculous. As Dagwood Bumstead, the character was known for a couple of things. One, he'd be late for work, knock the postman into the bushes, letters would go flying. But he was also known for having a great hunger for sandwiches, and particularly a sandwich that rose about this high with a pickle on top, lots of different meats with lots of breads in between. It was known and came to be known as the Dagwood. The Dagwood Sandwich was the most popular sandwich of the 1940s and the 1950s. And when he would appear at Rotary clubs, he would always bring a Dagwood sandwich for the Rotarians to have for lunch. They became so popular that when Rotary clubs would have their meetings without him, they'd still order these Dagwoods, but they changed the name to the Rotary Club Sandwich. The club sandwich is based on the Dagwood, created by the character that was performed by Arthur Lake. Hollywood history and a ridiculous form of American history.
Wow. Okay, so how do you start from the research of who this person is to all of a sudden now we're really remembering him, because every time we order a club sandwich, there's a past to it. So how do you get from that point to this point where we talk about it today?
There's different ways. Okay. I mean, I can either come up with the actor and then try and find the angle. Yes. But more often, I will look for the subject matter and then try to find the actor that actually is part of that subject matter. So we're going to be working on a documentary, because what Forgotten Hollywood has become is a franchise. Not only is it a book series, which we've got 2 more books coming out, by the way, and I'll tell you that in a second, but we also have a cable podcast on Therapy Cable, and we also have a book series, and we have a blog site, and we also have a weekly radio show. So we have a radio program that runs. But we're going to also do a documentary on one of the subjects, and that subject is Lionel Barrymore, because he was the perfect candidate to talk about how we perceive disability. And so I think that this is a fascinating topic, and I think it deserves a documentary look. And here's the way it works. Okay. Lionel Barrymore had a terrific family. Yes. I mean, we're talking Hollywood royalty. Well, he was such a great actor that he made great films, and he won an Academy Award early on when they were just giving out awards. He won the 3rd Best Actor Oscar ever for his work. Wow. And he made great films like Grand Hotel, Dinner at 8, Rasputin and the Empress. But after he made Captains Courageous, he broke his hip. The doctor examined him, said the hip would heal, but he also kept falling down, and they did some research and found out he had advanced degenerative arthritis. Within a year, he would be in a wheelchair. Now, he also had a lifetime contract at MGM, so when he went back to see Louis B. Mayer, he decided that he was going to make him honor that lifetime contract even while working in a wheelchair. Of course, MGM did. And he made a litany of great films while working his craft from a wheelchair. He did Test Pilot, A Guy Named Joe. He was in Key Largo with Bogart and Bacall. He was the bad guy, Mr. Potter, that we all know from It's a Wonderful Life. And he was an active doctor in the Dr. Kildare series. He was Dr. Gillespie performing his work in his craft from a wheelchair. So impressed was his audience, they kept coming. The bills were paid. But there was one member of the audience who could not see, could not hear, but went to the movies, was told the movies by Braille. That person was Helen Keller. Helen Keller was so impressed with the work of Lionel Barrymore, she wrote a letter to her best friend, Eleanor Roosevelt. Said, "Our time has come to fight disease and disability. Let's do it now. Talk to your husband." She spoke to Franklin, who himself suffered a disability. Well, Franklin thought, well, let's raise money for my campaign. Let me partner with Hollywood every year on my birthday, which he did, and the March of Dimes became the most successful fight for a charity in the history of those fights. So good and so important that now when you see a dime, you see Franklin D. Roosevelt on that dime. That's how important the March of Dimes were. The way we look at disability is because of three individuals that barely knew each other. One, a president who partnered with Hollywood. Two, an individual who could not see, could not hear, and still went to the movies. And three, an actor, my actor, in my books, Lionel Barrymore, who had a lifetime contract at MGM and was committed to making sure he worked even while in a wheelchair.
And so you're also a professor. So how do we incorporate what you've written into what's learned to future cinema students?
Well, I think what I try to teach my students, which I think is really important, is that they can do whatever they are interested in doing. They don't have to be committed to the brand of an individual who wants to hire them anymore. In today's atmosphere, in today's platforms, you can actually develop your own brand. And that shows maturity, and it shows growth, and more people are more willing to then network with you, maybe even hire you if you've developed your own brand. Now, in my day, the day when we used to drive our cars using our feet like the Flintstones, in my day, we would have to work off everybody else's brand. But today, the kids are really lucky. They can develop their brand very young. They have platforms to put them on, including YouTube and TikTok and all these other wonderful platforms. And this is what I teach them. And then I'll take them to LinkedIn, for example, and we'll set up a nice resume.
Yes.
And then what we do is we check the search engines based on the keywords on their resumes, and we help them find jobs. I like to tell stories that are seldom told because I think it's those forgotten Hollywood stories that are going to entice my listener base, my viewer base, my readership, and I think that's my small part in keeping this alive.
And I love your small part. Thank you so much, Manny, for keeping these legacies alive and then actually moving them, paying them forward to telling your students about these people that have made Hollywood what we know of it today. So thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Stay in touch with us on social media. Good night and stay well.